G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today, I guess this is going to be the part 3 in my informal Beast Snagger release series. Can I call it the Beast Saga? The Beast Snagger? No? Okay. Look, the reason I'm making this video is different to the other two. So each video has its own merits. One was all about marketing and strategies, one was about the failed launch, and this one today is about the community. Because I want to share with you my biggest fear when it comes to the community, my biggest concern long term. And that is how do we grow our community? Because the way I'm seeing it now, and this is anecdotal evidence, so for those who don't understand what that means, maybe you're not English speakers, anecdotal means what you've observed yourself, but it's not conclusive evidence. That's probably the best definition I can give it. So, my anecdotal evidence is this. When I was growing up, all through the 90s, the early 2000s, if you would go into your Games Workshop on a Friday night, there'd be a good 20-odd kids in there. And we're talking probably 8 and up. Mostly around the sort of 12 to 16-year-old range. And all these people, we'd all be playing with our kits, usually our whole armies, which in 3rd edition and such, you're only talking, 2 tactical squads and a tank or something and a HQ on the battlefield, but we'd be playing on the long table. So every Friday they would put 3 of the tables together and make a sort of longest table, and everyone would just play one big game, and it was a really cool thing to do because it didn't require that everyone had a massive army, everyone just chucked a couple of units on there. And you threw some dice, and it was a great way to spend a few hours, and everyone would head off to the food court together for dinner, and it was a great time. It was, for me, it was sort of the peak of my relationship with the hobby. And I don't see anything like that anymore. I don't see, 20, young teenagers hanging out in a Games Workshop together. And I'm not exaggerating, I mean literally 20 people. Is what you would have. This is also at a time though when you had a black shirt manager and you had 2 red shirts staff in the store working on a Friday night, and it was able to work really well because you had the manager who was sort of overseeing everything and would get around to customers. You had one red shirt who managed the games and another one who managed the painting table. It was a great environment, and you also had these big displays of fully painted miniatures all through the window shelving. Now, you might be lucky if you get a couple of IKEA cabinets with some miniatures in them at a store, and half the miniatures are people's own armies that aren't painted. And if there is an army, well, there's not a lot you can fit into a single shelf. So, very different environment. And so when I look at the community today, I'm looking at something like that and going, what the hell happened? I don't see those kind of age groups in the stores anymore. And when you do see someone who falls into that age bracket, it's usually just like a single one of them, and it's not a big community of these younger hobbyists who are all there with one another trying to learn from the more senior hobbyists like back in my day. There's no proteges, as it were. It's a very different environment to my mind. And then I thought, what would be causing this? And you think of all the, different things that are barriers to entry in this hobby, like I've polled recently, and okay, I thought let's look at 40k as an example. So here is what is available to you if you want to start 40k. Now I'm not saying collecting any specific faction, but just here's 40k. Take a look at the Necron Warriors plus paint sets. So, is 3 warriors and a few paints for $60 viable? Well, let's think to 3rd edition's starter set. In that, you got 5 Space Marines, which was a legal squad, with a flamer and missile launcher included that you could build the squad with in their paint set. You got the same amount of paints and a brush. So you had a legal squad that you could put straight onto the tabletop with the paints, and it was $25, which soon went to $35. So let's go off that, $35, because that's closer to half the price. So, did the disposable income for our children and our own wages, did they double in 20 years? No. Inflation over 20 years is barely 50%, if that. So, no, the hobby's outstripping wage growth by a factor of double. That's not great. So that's not very viable. Okay, again, used to be that you could get 2 5-man tactical squads, or even just buy a single 10-man squad, and a $12 librarian, chaplain, force commander blister pack off the shelf. $40 tactical squad, 10 models, that chaplain, that's $52. You could buy a $35 paint set, that character for $12, so that'd be $47, and a 5-man combat squad, which was $18. Combine that all together, you're looking at, $65. $65, you have a fully legal tabletop army. And this is at a time when armies were smaller as well, so it was easier to get into on the entry level. Alright, the Codex was also only $20 at the time. So $67 will go up to $87. And really, I can't really think of what else you need on top of that. I suppose dice and tape measures, something like that, but you didn't have to buy any of that from Games Workshop. So really, that's your bare minimum entry price was, around $87. Okay. If I wanted to do the same thing today, if I wanted to figure out what the bare minimum entry price was for a kid, if I looked at, let's see here, something like this Assault Intercessors paint set, $60. $60 there. You wouldn't bother with any of these. You'd probably go to like a Start Collecting box. So let's have a look. And again, I don't have the answers here. I'm just spitballing as I go. So go from, Start Collecting, start here stuff. Alright. So Primaris Marines. Powerful army, lower model count, can't really use any of this stuff. Maybe something like a combat patrol. Okay, well, if you combine just this combat patrol with that paint set, that's already $290. So you're already over 3 times the cost. I mean, you're getting more models. You're getting a tank, you're getting, double the model count here. But you're still at 3 times the cost already. You haven't even included a codex. Like, what's the codex cost currently for Space Marines? $84. Jeez. Codex alone now is the cost of an entire 3rd edition starting army and codex. We're only talking 2001 here, so 20 years. That's a huge... Yeah, okay. This helps me solidify my position. So here's my problem. Games Workshop of today, in my mind, is robbing Games Workshop of the future. And what do I mean by this? Well, they don't care, whatever it takes to make a profit today, what it does to the long-term health of the game. And that's what I'm thinking of. And I could be totally wrong here. There could be factors I'm just not taking into account. But the way I'm seeing it is that Games Workshop isn't thinking about the longevity of the hobby. Because that's what matters most to me, a hobbyist. If we don't have fresh people coming in, eventually you age out as a community. I'm seeing this with other activities I do. I'm into hunting with dogs. So I do quail shooting, duck shooting, that kind of thing. And the community that does that is generally getting older and older. When I go to a competition, I'm 30, nearly 33. Most of the people who are at the competition are probably average age around 60. and let that sink in. Imagine if Warhammer went that way, if, the average age of the hobbyist is someone in their 30s or 40s, and there's so few fresh people getting in. That concerns me. And some might say, they're doing great, they've got all these sales, and hang on a minute, you've got to distinguish between the sales overall and the people who are staying. It's very easy for a kid to come into Games Workshop with their mum, and the staff convince them to buy a box to start the game. If they don't do anything with that box and come back for more models later and continue to play the game, it doesn't matter. The company's made a sale, the company's happy, but the longevity's not in it, right? Think back. Yeah, okay, there's goodwill that's being built up since Kirby left, but how many kids are staying? What happens when every item that they might be interested in is something like the Snaggers, when every box set that comes out that has their attention, that actually has a really good value ratio compared to other Games Workshop products, is sold out prior to them being able to get their hands on it? That's not only disheartening for the kid, but the people who have the lowest amount of disposable income are children. They don't have a source of income. It's only whatever their parents will spare them. You've got children, then you've got probably your teenagers and your people in their early 20s doing things like university. They're moving out home for the first time, and they're living off ramen noodles and loaves of bread. It's only people who are in my age bracket, people in their late 20s, early 30s, 40s, whatever, who have disposable income. They've established themselves. They own houses already. If we're lucky enough to, we can afford the hobby. That's not a problem. We don't need a discounted box of miniatures. We don't need any of that. It's just a luxury in a lot of ways to get these things at a really nice price. The people who are entering the hobby, they're the worst off. They need the discounts the most, and they're not the ones who get the discounts. They're the ones who get bent over the hardest. And I think that's part of why they're not sticking around. Because they're getting shafted on these releases, the best deal they're ever going to get is buying a Start Collected box or buying an entry-level box into the game. But, the cost is just so prohibitively high, the barrier to entry. The only way to make 40k a feasible game at the current time for a child is to do something like Kill Teams. But if the child is putting all of their resources into getting Kill Teams, for instance, then where do they go from there? Because no matter what, they're still going to hit that barrier to entry. Or are we saying that kids are going to be stuck playing Kill Team until, you start playing this game at 14 years old today? How long are you going to be playing Kill Team for, or relying on the charity of your parents or your grandmother or whatever on your birthday to buy you a kit? How long are you going to be relying on that before you can actually play a proper game of 40k? Because like I said, they used to have these really fun longest table things in the store on a Friday night where all the miniatures you had painted practically, even if you didn't have a legal army, you could get a tactical squad out on the tabletop, and it was just played as a tactical squad and part of a wider army of, good guys versus bad or whatever. And you could give something to the team. You could contribute and you could play a game. And it also got your head around the rules. And the great thing about those long tables was, again, this is the third edition of the game where all the armies were pretty equally represented. It wasn't just Marine Fest 2020. No, we got to see, Craft World Eldar, Dark Eldar, and you've got an understanding of the rules of those other factions at the same time. So it was a great learning exercise because you're exposed to all these things at once, to Orcs, to Eldar, to Dark Eldar, to Space Marines, to Chaos Space Marines, to the early Tau, the early Necrons, and it built up your understanding of the 40k game, the 40k universe, the tactics, the war gear, the weapons. Great introductory point. That is long gone because you can't do it. You can't have 20 kids in a Games Workshop store now that's manned by a single person and have that guy still able to teach painting to people off to the side, to be talking to the customers that come in, and to also be guiding the game in the correct direction. None of that is possible. And so I really worry about the future of the hobby. Because right now, Games Workshop's making heaps of money because they're selling lots of kits. What happens, though, with the up-and-coming generation. If new people aren't getting into this hobby in enough numbers to replace the people who are getting out of the hobby, and that these new people getting in are not staying, then we have a major problem. But the thing is, I can't know how many people are staying when they get into this hobby. Yeah, we have a lot of people who are returning to the hobby who left in, 6th or 7th edition. Maybe they didn't like that game, so they came back because of 8th edition. They really liked that. Great. But how many people is that? I don't know. So I need to ask you guys, what are you seeing? What are the trends at your local community? If you mostly hang around Games Workshop stores, how many kids, teenagers are you seeing getting into the hobby? If you're at a local gaming club, same thing. How many kids, teenagers getting into it? And more so, how many of them are staying with it? People like to turn around and say, oh, these people I know returned because of 8th edition. They think it's a great game. Okay. All these people that returned to Warhammer who stopped playing it, got back into 8th edition, how many of those are still there 3 years on into 8th edition, or into 9th actually at this point? How many are lingering? I don't know, but I want to know. Because my big fear, my greatest hobby fear, is that all these people who got into the game, or who bought into the game, are not staying with the game. And so long term, that's really going to bite us in the ass as a community. I'm telling you right now, because what happens when the amount of people who are buying the product goes down? If Games Workshop wants to keep up the same level of money, they need to charge more for the kits, or they need to increase the sales to those who are still around. I don't see them increasing the amount of sales they make, I see them increasing the prices again. Which, again, it moves those goalposts further away, where kids can't get into the hobby. Like, if I was a kid now, and I have the option of buying into this hobby, and it's going to cost me the same price as a modern 5th generation gaming console, that's concerning. Whereas when I was a kid, $80 is, it's a bit of money, $87. Anything up to $100 is quite a bit of money when in 2011, for instance, or it's not 2001, not 2011. 2001, $100 is a lot of money to save as a kid, but it was more money than you got on your birthday. I guess I was lucky in that regard. Not everyone was. But to me, $100 is a lot of money, and it could still buy me a Warhammer army. It was only like $120 to buy in that time period, starter boxes, which contained 20 Tactical Marines, a Land Speeder, and I think it was 40 Dark Eldar Warriors, and a bunch of palm trees and some corner-shaped buildings. That was the starter set at the time, and it was $120. So that's a radically different price to what we've got now. And gaming consoles in that period were similar prices to now, $300-$400, depending on the gaming console, let alone the games, which were all, around that $80 to $100 mark. So, Australian, I should add. So yeah, all of this concerns me. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Back with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching this rambling, incoherent mess, but I'll see you on the next one.